Welcome to the art and science of difficult conversations, where we believe when you communicate better, you live better. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Chris, and as always, I'm joined with Lucie. Well, Lucie, I'm excited for today's conversation. Every year, I help out our high school as a career day, so we get to go in and talk and chat to the students about their interests in whatever career. So I usually talk to the psychology students or people who are interested in psychology or therapy. And this year, I met a gentleman who is a veteran and works with other veterans. Shared his story, and his story was much more compelling than mine. I was like, "Why?" I'm glad I went first because nobody would listen to me after this. But I loved his story. I loved talking to him. We were chatting afterwards, and I thought it'd be great to hear his story on our podcast and hear how he's helping other veterans deal with hard things that they're going through. So, Ryan, thank you for joining us on our podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So we also live in the same town, so it's kind of nice that we're nearby. Lucie, you should have flown out here for this.
Yeah, so we could have an in-person episode. Our first one. Next time.
So Ryan, thanks for joining. Why don't you tell our audience kind of your journey, how you got here?
Walked from my bedroom. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Commute, huh?
Long commute. Stop for coffee on the way over. No, I didn't need my car. I've had enough car troubles as it is, so I'm doing fine now. But no, Chris said, we had met. I've been helping. I graduated from Weymouth High School a long time ago at this point, but some years ago they keep asking me to come back and talk. I highly doubt it is because of just myself. Usually I'm with my dog Gatsby. Excuse me, and he's the big draw 99% of the time. Like, hey, Gatsby's here, and Ryan. So for once it was, I got to talk a little bit more about myself than I did my own dog. But he's awesome. However, like you said, I am a Marine Corps veteran. I did both combat theaters in Afghanistan and Iraq during the initial invasions, 2004 and 2005. I got out of the Marine Corps in 2006. But prior to that, how I kind of came into the person, what I'm doing now, it has always started from a life of service. I've always been had the attitude to help other people, almost to the detriment of myself. Going far beyond my limits. That's probably why I'm sick right now, because I'd been working nonstop for the last 2 weeks in some way, shape, or form. However, I come from a long line of military family. Both my grandfathers were in. One was Navy, one was Marine Corps. Obviously, I liked one better because I'm a Marine. Just kidding. And then I had my great aunt. She was. I eventually have to get her actual rank structure correct. She was I think an 06 in the Navy, and she was there for John F. Kennedy. She was there down at D.C. One of her good friends was Thurgood Marshall. So just a storied career from her perspective. But I didn't realize that until much later, after she had passed. For one reason or another, just kind of one of those things veterans don't talk about a lot of their time in service and that aspect. And then my uncle went into the Air Force Academy. He retired after 20-something years. His experience is much different than mine. I think 14 to 16 years of his time in the Air Force, he was coaching the Air Force hockey team. I'm like, that's great. Need for everybody, but definitely different experience than I had. With that being said, I grew up in a youth group just around the corner from my street. I ended up going to Bible college 99 and 2000. Came back home. I was working across the street from my house when 9/11 went down, and I was like, you know what, I need to do something. And I'm the oldest of three. My sister's 3 years behind me. My brother's 4.5 years behind me. So me and my brother are like, hey, let's join up. He jumped the gun, so to speak. He joined. He came home just after Christmas that same year, and he's like, hey, Mom, I need my birth certificate. She's like, why? He's like, I joined the Marine Corps. I'm like, bro, what's going on, man? We could have gone in together. That was kind of the game plan, but I think, get out from underneath my shadow. Not that I had a big shadow I was casting anywhere or anything like that, but he ended up going in. He went down to boot camp. We were down there for graduation, came back home. I swore in to the Marine Corps, and I left for boot camp November 3rd, 2002. And that's kind of where everything took off. So it was just after the invasion of Iraq and kind of fooling around with Afghanistan at that point. After boot camp, went to my unit, and then we were doing a workup. Just means we were training in our specialty to do what we had to do when we got over there. And then my unit, 1st Battalion, 6th Marines, a lot of big numbers and names and stuff like that. But We took called a MEU, a Marine Expeditionary Unit, and then we were special operations capable. That means we worked with all the stuff that you see at like the special operations community, and we took ships over to Afghanistan. So it took like 3 to 4 weeks to get over there at that time, and then landed at Kandahar Air Force Base, and we jumped on our trucks, and that was in very beginning of March, and then we didn't come back to a real actionable base until August of that year. It was an interesting time, and then I came back in November, and then we turned around and left for Fallujah, Ramadi in 2005, and went straight in another combat zone. That one was a little bit different because we jumped on a plane and we were landing like 26 hours later. So we kind of had like Afghanistan was a little bit different. Got to play on ship and stuff like that, and then get over there, and then got out of the Marine Corps about a year later. I got out as my Marines were pushing out just because of the timing. I couldn't get. I only had like 3 months. I could pretty much accomplish everything I wanted to at that point. I mean, I had 2 combat tours. I've done everything I wanted to do, and then did everything I didn't want to do at that point. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm good. Like I was trying to figure out some of my injuries. We're just pushing those ones off. And then as I was exiting the Marine Corps, I lost 3 of my junior Marines, and I was in the casualty watch office. What that meant, I was one of the higher ranking people in there as a sergeant. And it just mean anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. We would be notified if anybody was killed in action or wounded or missing, and then we'd have to go through our steps to contact the home state, contact DC, so on and so forth like that. And I had just come off a 24-hour rotation, and I had like 3 red folders like pushed in my direction. And I knew exactly what that meant. And unfortunately, I knew what it meant, but then I was like, oh crap, that's probably my unit. And sure enough, it was. And so a week before I got out of the Marine Corps, I actually had to take a ride. I was stationed down in Jacksonville, North Carolina. I had to take a drive out west in North Carolina and attend one of my good friends' funeral service, kind of help out with that. And I got out like a week after that. And then, yeah, it was definitely different. And then, like I said, I got out in November and actually went up to DC where my brother was because he was at Quantico teaching in the Marine Corps. And we got to see the grand opening of the National Marine Corps Museum, which is phenomenal. I don't care what, just as a human in general, you want to see a phenomenal museum. You can see it right off the highway. It looks like it's an homage to the Iwo Jima Memorial monument. Sorry. But anyway, came back and it was pretty cool. Then I came back home, got a job pretty much like within 3 weeks. Like most Marines or most people that were in infantry, like security. That's kind of like what everybody just automatically assumes. Got into a security gig and was there working there for about 9 months. And at one point during my 9 months, I was doing something. I went to turn and I collapsed. Not from like a heart attack or anything. My back just gave out. Like I just lost feeling. It just kind of went straight down. I didn't lose any function or anything like that. It kind of like went down and like took me a minute or 2 to get back up. The doc was like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing on your feet 10 to 12, 16 hours a day. So I was like, we're done. I wouldn't say I wasn't too upset by leaving that job because it just wasn't what I was doing.
Sure.
But that's been kind of not spiraled. I was never into drinking. I was never into drugs. I just kind of went into a cold, dark place. I just didn't want to get out at the time. My girlfriend was phenomenal. She stuck by me she's my wife now, but I was living at home with mom and dad for a good 8 months. And finally my mom went up to my dad. She's like, either he leaves or I leave. She's like, I can't take his attitude. I can't take his anger. I'm sure there's a whole host of words coming out of her mouth, which is fine. And my dad's like, hey, bud, you have a month to get your crap together, get out, find your own place, and get a job. Miraculously, I was able to do that. And I always joke with people, I'm like, I moved 1.5 miles down the road. I hate doing laundry. And my mom's like, I'll do your laundry for you. I'm like, great. So I moved as far away as I could. I ended up finding an apartment. Started working full time at the emergency room in South Shore Hospital, whatever it's called now. I was there for about 6 years, and I found out I got accepted into UMass Boston. And then I was like, all right, cool. So I went for a double undergrad. Not because I'm smart. It just like I said, I had a Bible degree. I had a counseling degree, youth ministry and stuff. but I wanted to take psychology and sociology, and that's kind of where me and Chris kind of met at that point. Well, at least professionally in that sense, like the background, because I want to know the individual and also I want to know society. I wanted to know the group at large, and I want to know how both work together. So I cranked that out in 5 years, started my master's degree, ended up pushing that to the side because I didn't want to, I was going in for like voc rehab counseling or whatever, and I just don't want to work within the government facet, and I just wasn't into it. But I ended up landing my dream job working with Wounded Warrior Project because I was taking men and women out recreational slash therapeutic retreats, holistic approach to healing, so backpacking, fishing, whitewater rafting, ice climbing, from Maine to Seattle to Germany. And then while I was doing all this, at some point, my parents were like, you need some mental health help. I'm sure it was like not as polite conversation, like get your crap together, So they're like, hey, get some help. And then that's when I heard about the home base program where I currently work now. I was like, all right, because I had gone through my list of everybody at the VA and social worker, and it just nothing wrong with it. It was just I just was talking to people that just you don't connect with. And I was like, hey, found home base, and it worked so well that it came a point when me and my girlfriend were going to move in with each other. And I'm like, hey, hon, like, you want to do couples therapy with me? I mean, because you're going to be there when I wake up screaming in the middle of the night, when I'm just pacing, when I haven't slept in days, whatever, that PTS, that other entity that's in their room. I really want you to do it. And she's like, okay. And she was on board with it. And a lot of the stuff that we learned going through that therapy, I still use to this day. I always tell people, I'm like, I have a house with a white picket fence. I have a dog. I have 2 daughters. Like everything's working out. But a lot of those tools and techniques I learned like almost like 10 years ago at this point, we're still using today. Like, hey, I need a timeout. I just need like let's chill out, come back in 20 minutes and keep talking or whatever words you want to use. And so much so when I was working for the Warrior Project, I got pulled over to help the home base program with some of their programming, the experiential stuff, and just what to do on the weekends. And I talked myself in the job. I'm like, hey, you guys hiring? Because I was traveling almost 20 plus weeks a year all over the country, and we just had our baby at that point. And like I think within 2 months, I left one time for a week, furthest one out. So she's like trapped in a room with like a space heater. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like a second time, I'm up in northern New Hampshire, and my other dog got sprayed by a skunk and then ran in the house after being sprayed. Thankfully, my parents are physically 4 miles down the road. So I called my dad at 10:30. I'm like, I'm 5 to 6 hours away from home. Can you guys get over there? So with all that being said, I was just like, hey, home base, what are you doing? He's like, hey, doing it 1 weekend a month, a couple days during the week. And then I was like, sweet. So now I've been working at the home base program for the last 8 years. It's been great. It's been definitely growing on me. I haven't left for. I like it. I mean, like it's a really good job. It gets really impact, and I never get tired of hearing people like, "Hey, you guys saved my life," or "You saved our marriage." I'm like, and that's where I kind of turn the tables back on. I'm like, we didn't do anything. I'm like, we just showed you some stuff that may or may not work. It's you as a person or you as a couple that make your own, and like take the onus, take the pride in the fact that you worked through your issues and that you were able to get to where you're at. I always use I'm like, hey, we're just the ferryman getting you from one side to the other side. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, now I work at the world's number one privatized healthcare in the entire world, treating PTSD, post-traumatic stress, military sexual trauma, traumatic brain injury. We're working with up until the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War, we now currently see any individual that's raised their right hand in the line of service. So it doesn't matter.
It's cool.
Doesn't matter if they deployed, doesn't matter their discharge status, and it's completely free. And we have a bunch of different programming. So like literally we see people from DOD, we've had Secretary of Defense come through, Secretary of Navy, not come through the program, but at least come up. We've had the First Lady come through a couple of years ago, Dr. Biden, she came through just to check it out. We've had a lot of individuals coming in and understanding that what we do here matters and that people leave better from what they are. And like, you guys being where you're at, you see like, I mean, our graduation rate's over 96%, which is twice now.
Awesome.
And we have almost like in that 2-week program, like over an 85% reduction in PTS symptomology. I mean, it's like they get close to 80 hours worth of therapy in 2 weeks. And like we have a whole ton of stuff going there, and just seeing where it was when I'm like, I remember signing on my email a couple of years, like back when I first started, it was like 60, 70 people. Now we're up to like 160 employees. And we're,
Nice.
we're now in right next to the USS Constitution in Charlestown Navy Yard. We have a satellite down in Florida. We had just opened up a smaller branch out in Arizona. So it's like but we fly people physically from all over the world, like 120 countries at this point. But yeah, so I mean, like I said, I just continue like life of service, and like if I'm not doing that, then I'm like the vice president of our local soccer committee, Holbrook and Avon Youth Soccer, and then I do a lot of backcountry. I teach a lot of backwoods first aid, rescue, and then I do executive coaching. Like when we take men and women, we use the outdoors to kind of facilitate that. The frustration pieces, the communication building. How to like. I give them a match and some wood and like make a fire, and it's just like watching them struggle through that. But essentially, giving everybody the tools and then kind of taking that as a breakdown, and just because too many times like we're stuck on a screen or we're stuck in a classroom trying to like teach these things. I'm like, let's just do this outdoors, and it's been working phenomenally. So there's very rarely any time that I'm stationary for any length of time. But
That's awesome.
Kind of thrown a lot. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more. Like my friends call me the most interesting man in the world because not much I haven't done or I've been involved with. But like I said, I really appreciate the opportunity today.
I appreciate you sharing your story. When you were active duty and you were in, how much, and this is like, obviously the times have changed even within 20 years. How much discussion was there when you were in the service about trauma or mental health, or discussions about that support?
If the only thing I remember like vividly is coming back off. So when Afghanistan and Iraq were 2 different deployments. I have no problem talking about, so honestly, ask whatever questions you want. So Afghanistan, I actually got to see the enemy. I watched the enemy perish, and then unfortunately for us in Afghanistan, out of like the 1,200 Marines there, we lost only one. It was like my good friend Corporal Payne. Crappy situation, just mismanagement of time and effort and stuff like that. However, statistically, that's phenomenal considering that we had 17 major battles. We were in combat days on end, to the point where we actually captured the enemy, Taliban, or whatever we were calling them back then. And during the interrogation, like everywhere you go, you create death. You are the Death Walkers. So that's our moniker, is the Death Walkers, for everything that we did while we were over there. But like, yeah, I mean, there was loss of life mainly on their side. I had friends that were injured in some way, shape, or form. I've been knocked out. That's always a funny question to VA. Like, how many times were you knocked out? I go, I don't know. I was knocked out. So it's not like it was like check. It's not like I had like a tally or whatever. But the mental health piece was more like, it is really funny because you see men and women. It was mainly men for us, but guys that never smoked started smoking. It was just like, that was the biggest thing. Like after major skirmish, everybody's like just sucking down a cigarette just to kind of like, the adrenaline pump and all that stuff that goes along with it. But when we got back and on ship, we're sitting there filling out paperwork. It's just like, were you witness to anything? And you kind of like, yes. It's like, were you witness to death? Yes. Enemy? Yes. Friendly? No. You having nightmares, and like you have a senior staff person standing over, like, you good? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. You just check it off. Excuse me. So it wasn't so much talked about, other than like, looking back at it, we kind of, like, me and my teammates, we kind of laugh about it in the sense of like, I don't know how jacked up I was. Like I look back on it now, it was just like moral injury, just like the conversations. It's just like the norms that we're over there talking about while we're over here. People are looking at us like, are you people insane? Stuff like that. But there wasn't a lot of mental health talk at that point, other than just like, how are you doing? Good. Are you having any nightmares? No. Like, you just had someone leaning over your shoulder, making sure you're filling out the paperwork. Because back then it was just like, suck it up, buttercup. I mean, it still is for the most part, but at least now more of our leaders, been getting with like leaders like with Home Base and Warrior Project and all those big people out there that starting to realize that there is stress, there is PTS. And even back then in 2004, 2005, it still was a brand, like, newer terminology, because I think it came out like 98, 99 or whatever. They started talking about it, but it's still a kind of a new hat. But then like Iraq, pretty much the same thing. Like it wasn't really like, hey, if you need somebody to talk to, chaplain's right there. Because like I lost my best friend coming up on 20 years this April. IED, he was our corpsman, and usually if anybody gets hurt, you say corpsman up. It just happened to be him, and like I was there too. Like I said, I was a pastor before, so I helped with his service while we're in country, and got to the you see the imagery when the guys walk up to the cross and see the, with the helmet and the boots and stuff like that. We all said our goodbyes, and then physically walked out of the building that we're utilizing, put our kits back on, and then rolled back out. It was just like you didn't have time to process. Like obviously, anger is like the easiest one to utilize, and that's what most of the military uses. So yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of conversation other than like, "You good? Yeah, okay, let's go." Like they encourage us to use our anger as a weapon, our emotions as a weapon to get through it. And I see. I mean, it's very effective. Don't get me wrong. However, years later, it can kind of pop back up in a different way.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you're in a survival mode at that point too. Like you just also don't have the time or space to think about it or process it. You have to like go out there and continue doing what you got to do.
Yeah, it's kind of like quick turnaround. Like the stuff they don't tell you about is like, in Afghanistan, after we finished with our combat operations, a lot of time we had to go up into the hills and then collect what was remained. I don't know how to say it delicately. We had to pick up the remains and then bring it back down. Like, hey, is this your person? In the villages that were like, oh no, we're friendly, and then they fire on us and stuff like that. Those things, and I'm like, trust me, like with a whole, like I know now because I've done a lot of talks on moral injury, but the crap that we used to do over there, and like you see, like I talked to another military person, like, dude, that's funny as that I'll get out, but then I come back home and like parents, friends and family are like, you did what with what? I'm like, it's just social norms. That's completely different. Like, just separate the two, two continents at this point.
And I know that you said that your parents were like, you got to fix this or you can't be living here. Was there, outside of that, was there other times where you started noticing for yourself that like you were having a harder time adjusting than you realized?
I mean, I'm sure there was days where I'm like, wow, this sucks. But I'm like, I guess, you kind of get into it and then you don't realize how deep you're into it until someone's like, your dad's like, you got to get out. Like, sorry, dude, like you have a month. But it's like I tell everybody initially at some point I had to step up and like I actually sought help. I mean, it took a while to actually land someone that understood what I was saying or at least where I was coming from. So I had one social worker and I'm like, it still annoys me to this day. I've always carried a pocket knife on me. No matter since I was like 12, I did landscape and I did paper out. You had to cut the strings and stuff like that. And she confronted me one day about it during our session, whatever. And she's like, "You're using that as a crutch. You need to get rid of that." And I'm like, "No, it's a tool. It's not." I'm like, "I'm not carrying like I'm gonna get stabby with somebody." I'm like, "I don't carry a firearm." And like, no, it's just a small little pocket knife that I open boxes. Nowadays it's like boxes, letters, just whatever. And we just were butting heads for the longest time. I'm like, you know what? I think we just have to see somebody else. She's like, well, if it's not going to work with me, it's not going to work with anybody else. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. So I was just like, and I'm like, yeah, I know we're all shaking our heads because we all know. I'm like, that's not the type of person, that's the type of therapist that you want to see. And I finally found one through home base, and even a couple times we butted heads, but like we kind of worked through it. And that's why I tell people nowadays when they're like, oh, how'd you get to where you are? I'm like, find somebody you can relate to. I'm like, it's okay to switch people out. And it's just too many times the VA switches out people without us knowing, like, oh, by the way, she's leaving, or they're only doing a rotation here for 6 months. So that's where a lot of our military, at least that are out, have a hard time with, because they just kind of keep it's a revolving door.
So this topic, I've noticed even myself getting a little bit, I don't know if triggered, because my family, me coming from Europe, 2 world wars, my family was impacted. My grandpa was shot, but he survived in one of the wars. I seen the trauma in the villages, in my family, in the whole basically environment, coming through one generation to another. And we even had a guest before on our podcast, Becky Ellis, that was talking about how it impacted her when her dad was in the military, and the stories. And what I'm hearing from your story, when we look at the difficult conversations, that the support, that there's an impact, there is the PTSD, there's the struggles, which are completely natural and normal. Because this is extremely stressful situation for all of us. I'm hearing what you said, my family told me they basically set some boundaries with you in a way.
It wasn't like a violent, like we were having like, blowout or anything like that. My dad's like, let's like talk man to man. And my parents, I mean, sorry, the one thing I forgot to say, like my parents were freaking phenomenal. They still are. Like we're best. Like they live 4.5 miles from my house right now. But they did like what I didn't realize that they had gone like they actually did some stuff with home base, but they also had done a lot of research. Like they're like, hey, what can we do? What is PTS? What is like what the heck's going on? And like they kind of made a game of like waking me up in the middle. Like if I had to wake up in the morning, like I missed my alarm and stuff like that, my dad would like stand back and like throw shoes at me because I still snap up. Like if you wake me out of like a deep sleep, when I'm actually sleeping, like I still snap up. I'm not like. Well, we were just actually joking about this the other night. My wife's like, yeah, sometimes she wants a bigger bed so she doesn't have to like hit me because she's still fearful. But I'm like, I'm used to it now. Like my kids, when they come in the room, they have 6 and 9, both girls, like they'll come and go on my wife's side of the bed, like, hey. But I usually hear them, but they're just like, they were, I guess, taught and trained not to wake dad up out of like a deep sleep. And I'm like, I still like kind of jump, but I'm not like looking and swinging or anything like that. It's kind of like to snap up. But no, I mean, it was probably the easiest. I mean, like I look back at it now, I'm sure my parents have different viewpoints on that. Like it's not like we don't talk about it anymore. But like, I mean, I got my brother's been through he's been through home base. Like I also got treated there for my TBI because I have issues with memory loss, recall and stuff like that. And they helped me out, especially in the college career because I suck at testing. I have no recall or very little. I'm like, I know what I'm doing. I know all the rant, but then like get me in front of a test and they're like, I know what this says. I know there's an answer in here somewhere. And so I was able to like work out through that and make it, come out better on the other end.
Fantastic. That just shows also the power of the community.
Yeah.
And how that supported you. I'm thinking of those people that maybe have in their life somebody that is struggling.
Yeah.
But they really have a hard time setting the boundaries. What would be something you could tell those? It sounds like for you, it was actually exactly the thing that you needed to kind of create that change in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of developed my own mantra. It's just like people have to ask questions. We have to provide answers so we can find solutions. And then like, a lot of times that's why I tell people, I'm like, ask me whatever you want. I've been to like high school. It's like, hey, did you kill anybody? To what'd you do over there? How did it feel? Stuff like that. And, I've come up with like PC answers depending on what age group I'm talking to and just the language I'm using and stuff. But for those people that, there's ignorant people, then there's ignorance. There's just not knowing, and then there's knowing and not doing. And that's why I say like ignorance, right? That's at least what I equate it to. But, the common thing I hear all the time is that I don't want to take it away from somebody else. Somebody else needs it more than I do. And I'm like, no, it's free. Like, especially with home base. I'm like, it doesn't cost you anything but time. I'm like, you've already wasted, I say wasted. I'm like, you've already spent all this time trying to self-medicate, and look where that's landing you. You've spent all this time, and like sometimes I'm real with people, and I'm like, it's a detriment. Like it's people are like, what's your strength and weakness? I'm like, I'm the same person. You'll get me now. That you'll get me in front of a crowd in half an hour. I'm the same all the way around. However, it can backfire because I'm like, I've been in meetings like, oh, that's stupid, and that was out loud, right? And also like everybody turns to me, but those people that need that kick in the pants, it's just like that old expression, you can lead a horse to water. And that's why I really encourage people that have been through programs that have worked for them, wherever they've gone through, is like go back and talk about it in that community. Because even those men and women that I've seen people go through programs, talk to, their people back at home, and next thing you know, there's like 10 more people coming out. It's just because like, hey, if, in the operations community, like, hey, Master Chief just went through the program. If he can do it, I can do it. Like, hey, the CEO just went through it. If he can do it, I can do it. And it's like, I tried to, I lead by example, not intentionally. It's just kind of like it just people always like, oh, how'd you get? I'm like, guys, I've been out in 2006. I've had numerous therapists. I've heard numerous counselings. I've been on medications. I've been off medications. I'm not perfect, but I'm getting through it. It's just,
Mm.
I just try to, especially those that are served. It's like, hey, remember how bad it was like in boot camp or basic, and how bad that sucked. And then all of a sudden, like you get to your unit, you're like, well, that was the easiest time in my career was boot camp. Because hey, boot camp, at least for the Marine Corps, I'm like, you get 3 meals a day, you get at least 7 hours of sleep, and that's it. Like after that, you're training, you're doing whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's not the exact same thing, but I often tell newborn parents the same thing. Like they're struggling with like the sleepless nights, and I say this is the easiest time of parenting. It only gets harder from here. Like you get more sleep for sure, but it gets harder, a lot harder from here on out.
Especially I call my kids Sour Patch Kids because like get out of my face, and then I love you 2 seconds later. You're like, all right, you kind of forget about what just happened. Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. Did you have an example of somebody that had gone through programming or therapy that inspired you, or were you kind of just figuring it out?
I think I was figuring out, but at the same time, like I know my brother went and got help too, because like I said, he was in the Marine Corps as well. He did his deployments over. He never went to Afghanistan. He was in Iraq twice. Not that it matters, but just like so we had at least so to back up just a bit. While I was in, my brother was in, so we were leapfrogging for about 3.5 years. As one was going over, one was coming back, and one was going over, one was coming back. So we missed each other here and there, just because of our they call it ops tempo. It was a little bit faster than normal. And he saw his fair share of stuff, loss of life on both sides and everything. And it worked for it worked for him. It got through a lot of his traumatic stuff or whatever he went through. Like we kind of talk about, we kind of don't. But he was I think he actually introduced me to the home base program because like he heard about it, like, hey, you should check it out. So like, what's it gonna hurt? I'm like, if people are, it just got to, I think it just got to the point where I'm like, enough people are telling me that I was, jacked up that I should probably at least give it a try. Right. So just like, all right, I'll call. That's the worst case that's gonna happen. And I'm like, okay. And then I'd say enjoy it. The one part I did enjoy is that part of my homework for the longest time was to go to a movie theater and sit in the middle. So for like 6 or 8 months, me and my wife, not yet, but me and my girl at that time, we were seeing like 2 movies every month. So that was my homework. I mean, I saw like every movie in the theater, but that was just like the whole being comfortably uncomfortable, not knowing, sitting next to the exit or at the end of the row, or just like sitting jack in the middle or whatever, just trying to figure that out. Not say I could remember every movie that we saw, but at least, worked through it and stuff like that. But yeah, it just being able to talk about the experience and just sharing it with other people when they ask. So that's why I do it. I'm like, ask me whatever you want. I'll tell you.
I just really want to acknowledge you because it shows your resilience and strength. And that it also is a journey, and it can be a long journey. But sounds like you are getting through it, and not only just for yourself, but also sharing it and really being courageous to really open up. And being open with your experience, it takes courage because it's being vulnerable. But I see that you really also do it for both yourself and anybody else, because as just you mentioned, like the stories can inspire. It's again the power of the community in a way, healing everyone through sharing your stories and your healing journey.
Thank you.
What would you say are the hardest conversations that you're having?
I like the big thing is like because I've done panels and actually do one at PAX East, which is like the largest gaming convention. We did it last year. My friend runs a nonprofit called Frost Call, and it's military gaming. It's like to get those men and women that not hide, but for conversation's sake, hide behind their screens and do their things and it brings them together in a room where they can all game together. Last year we had a breakout room where we had about like 80 people come through, just veterans from physically all over the country, which is really strange. And we're trying to get on a panel talk about military and gaming and how military is using gaming now to kind of like recruit for like drone usage and so on and so forth. But I do a lot of talks on moral injury. And those are the biggest conversations because like I had to talk to a high school a couple months ago. Was it last year? time doesn't really matter, but it was right around Veterans Day usually. And the teacher asked me to come in. He's like, hey, I get like 4 or 5 classes if you don't mind answering some questions. I'm like, nope, they can ask me whatever they want. He's like, well, we just watched Restrepo, which is about the embattled Army unit in Afghanistan. It's a really powerful movie. I've probably seen it at length, but I don't think I've seen it like entirely in one sitting. Like I was there, so I kind of, well, not at that exact place, but been in that similar situations. And so they had questions, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. And just be able to show up on that and try to explain to them, like, stuff happens. There's loss of life on both sides. I'm like, it's never fun. But at one point, one of the kids, finally was like the last class of the day, and just that one kid in the class, everybody has it, just that kind of guy that's like, just shoots his mouth off. He's like, hey, did you kill anybody? I'm like, yeah. And everybody just like froze. I see the teacher kind of like melt into the seat. And I answered, like, I was measured in my answer because I knew how he was asking it and kind of like what the response, like, I've done that enough times. And I was like, yeah. He's like, how many? I'm like, that's where I'm going to stop you. I'm like, I'll tell you right now, if you asked me that just after coming back my deployment, I would have no trouble throwing you out that window. So I'm like, there's things that you just do not ask people in this context. It's not the right time or place. I go, however, in my line of work in the military, we didn't keep track per se, much as like Chris Kyle from American Sniper with 170 some odd kills or whatever, but they have to confirm that after they've unalived somebody that they have to keep track of that, because based on operations, I'm like, we had missiles, grenades, like we had a lot of different stuff. So I go, to be frankly honest, I'm like, we didn't have the capability. Like we had a couple left foots, right hands, couple, like it was kind of a best guess scenario at some of the instances that we were in. And he was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, I'm glad you asked that question, because you can ask that. And I go, that's fine. I'm like, you're lucky you have me answering it like in a very calm manner. And he's just like, everybody acknowledged that. My buddy who's a teacher was like, see, he was about to pass out. I'm like, no, man, it's fine. Like I talked to him afterwards. Actually, this past year I was talking to a high school, and one of the kids is interested in going to operations and so on and so forth. And he was like, hey, was there ever civilian casualties? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you know anybody that happened to? I'm like, yeah. He's like, who? I'm like, me. And I shared with him, I have no problem talking about it, but I'm like, I had a reunion some time ago, and like we're all telling our versions of the same story. Also, we started piecing stuff together. I was like, oh yeah, that's right, that happened. Because it's all fragmented, based on who's in the room and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, that one time we were getting shot at, blah, blah, blah. And like, this took off, and like, we were in a truck, and I ran over a donkey, and my buddy's like, that wasn't a donkey. I'm like, you talk about, it was an old man and a kid. I was like, oh, all right. I'm cool with it. I'm like, it happened. So I was like, oh, but when this kid had asked me that, I go, what happens during trauma is that your brain decides to figure out a better scenario in your head, so that way you can move on and move through it. And he was like, oh, I'm like, there's stuff like that happens. I'm like, not a lot of people talk about it. And like moral injury, just being able to talk about that. Because I don't know if you remember, have you seen the TV show MASH?
Yeah.
There's the one scene in MASH where there's an air raid going on, and Alan Alda's in there. And the one woman, he's like, in his mind, the woman has a chicken, and it keeps on clucking while they're trying to be really quiet. And then when he goes back and when they go back and look at it, it wasn't a chicken, it was a baby. And the mother had, I think, suffocated the child so that everybody else. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this, drawing the lineage from that, I'm like, that's the perfect example of like what trauma is when your mind starts creating a new scenario to help you get through it. And so when I talk about moral injury, I mean, I was like succumbed to that because at one point I had to go to a ropes course up in New Hampshire with a teammate of mine. She was a social worker, and we were just like testing the facility out and doing a zip line. And we're with 2 young kids. And they're like, yeah, we went at these T-shirts. It's like, I survived the, New England's largest zip line, and have like a body bag, like I survived, didn't need this, whatever. I'm like, fun fact, when I was in Iraq, when I was in Afghanistan, I had my own body bag with our name on it just in case something went down. And the kids' faces just kind of went blank, and I was just like, all right, cool, let's go. Next line. And she just leans over, she's like, moral injury. And I'm like, oh, that's what that is. Okay. Yes, I'm like, I apologize to the guys afterwards. I'm like, don't worry, you didn't, like, they thought they offended me. I'm like, you didn't offend me. I'm like, I was just kind of going back and forth with you. And I just realized I took that joke to a whole new level. And they were both like,
Yeah.
no, it's cool. But it just like kind of like things like that come up, and refusing to talk about it. I'm glad it happened.
Hmm.
Like 10, 15 minutes later, I'm like, hey, man, I'm sorry. Being able to use those stories for examples for that way, people can ask those questions. And I think the biggest problem is that people aren't asking difficult questions, aren't having those difficult conversations. Like probably the most difficult thing I've ever said to people, it's like, it's not so much when you're involved in it, it's the fact that you like doing it.
Hmm.
We just got so used to, especially in Afghanistan, so used to being shot at, all that stuff, that we were just like, you wake up to alarm clock, enemy fire, like, let's get this. I'm like, we're sitting there smoking cigarettes. I'm walking between trucks, passing out candy. I'm like, we're having fun doing it. I'm like, and I tell people that, and I'm like, that's not a scenario where it should be fun. We're like in,
Yeah.
normal civilized world where it shouldn't be fun. However, we're like, this has been awesome, man. I'm like, you see what we just did? And he's like, man, that was cool. I'm like, I never knew that thing could do that. You just having those conversations, but God forbid you have them back at like your local watering hole and you have a bunch of, military members going like, oh, remember when that happened and this, and that's
Yeah.
where, but I think society is so guarded where they just don't ask, like, are you okay with that? Like, they just don't ask those difficult questions. I'm like, I encourage it. And I'm like, just ask me, it's like, if you want to talk about it, but then like, I stopped caring if people got offended by it. That's like for my side of it. I'm like, when that kid's like, hey, did you unalive somebody? I'm like, yep. Like, oh my gosh, how can you do that? I'm like, unless you're there,
Yeah.
you have no idea. I'm like, I can't, speak to your level on like your hockey tournament or whatever, but I just not that I just stopped paying attention to those people that got really offended by my answer. I'm like, you asked the question.
Right.
So
What do you think? Like I think that's a good pair or a contrast, because like I think teenagers are really, they don't have a filter. They're just going to say whatever pops into their head. But I think you're right that adults probably have the same question, but they don't ask that question. What do you think is that difference, like that most adults won't ask those questions or ask any questions at all?
I think that, I don't know if I said it with you, Chris, when I was in the classroom, like, hey, if you're going to ask somebody how they're doing, make sure you have the time for their answer. Right? Too many times we just pass people in the hallway like, hey, how's it going today? Good. I'm like, I intentionally ask people that question because I don't care if I'm late for something. I'm like, if I see Lucie's having a bad day, I'm like, hey, man, you didn't get that car? What's going on? You like, everything good? Like, yeah. I'm like, no, really. Like, I'm asking a question. And I think kids are just kind of taught that, just kind of blow by somebody. But I'm like, you never know that one day that you ask that to somebody like, Chris, how you doing today? And Chris shares that, not having a good day and he's thinking some terrible thoughts or whatnot. And you could find out that you could have saved his life or her life just by giving those people the attention, because so many people are concerned about themselves that they're not paying attention to that. I go, vice versa. I want Chris to ask me how I'm doing because I want to tell somebody how I'm feeling today. Like, please, somebody ask me, and nobody does it. And I think most people in general are just afraid to hear somebody's answer. They're just like, whoa, I don't know you and your wife are having a fight, or I don't know you and your husband are having a fight. I don't know that your dog just died or your mom's on hospice. So like, I don't need to know that. Now they feel guilty for asking because they feel that's just my observation, that they feel that they just open up a can of worms and like, I don't have time for this. I'm like, then why'd you ask me? So like, I've never, and I've learned over the years, like when I talk to a lot of high schools, if I'm doing like a motivational speech or if I'm just doing a keynote or whatever, I'm like, when somebody asks you how you're doing, tell them how you're doing. Or if you're going to ask somebody else, vice versa, do the same thing. I think teenagers just say whatever they want. And this culture is really weird. Because like my daughter's like 9, go to your room. No, I'm like, who the? I'm like, yeah. There's gentle parenting, then there's like 10 minutes into this whole argument, like just get your ass in the room.
Right.
However, parents just don't want to. I think a lot of people are self-centered, and not in like in a narcissistic way, but they just don't want to know about what you're going through. And I think that like the parents like, oh, we don't have time for it. We just don't want to involve. We don't want to know any more than they already think they know. And I think with like teenagers, like you said, they just like, what? I'm like a teenager in that aspect. I'm like a 12-year-old boy, and I'm like, that's what she said. But I'm like, it's just kind of, just having those like quick comebacks and stuff.
Yeah.
But teens, I'm like, hey, if we can influence like in middle and high school be like, hey, a lot of these songs, it's more popular to not be okay, and some people try to like sweep it underneath that umbrella that, oh, I'm like that song, I'm not okay, but at least there's more attention to it. I just get annoyed when everybody's like, oh, I have PTS from COVID. I'm like, no, you don't. I'm like, you can't. I'm like, was your life ever threatened? No. I'm like, you don't have documented PTS. You can have depression, you can have anxiety, you can have other things, but I'm like, PTS from something that never happened to you is not considered. So that's the only part that annoys me when people say I have PTS from COVID. I'm like, no, you have anxiety built around it. But hopefully I answered your question. I just realized I kind of went off on a tangent, but
No. I think that was great. I think that's so insightful. That this is a side note, I'll probably use that as like the tagline of the show.
I
That
was thinking about this.
do people really care about the answer when they're asking? So they're just scared about hearing, a whole can of worms come out.
yeah, it's just self-centeredness. That's all.
And I might even add just maybe being uncomfortable about emotions, because kids are maybe nowadays will be taught about how to navigate emotions, how to shift emotional, how to process in a healthy way our emotions. Maybe people are, because they don't know even how to respond to somebody when they say, well, something like this, I just had a fight with my wife, let's say, with my husband, whoever, or somebody died. They even don't know how to maybe respond. So they are uncomfortable. And therefore, they even don't want to know, to avoid the discomfort. But what happens, our connections actually are very superficial because we really don't open up.
Yeah, if it's not connected to your phone, like, no, I'm like, I try to make a point to like check my phone as soon as I walk in the house. I'm like, everything that matters is in this house. And if somebody outside this house needs to get a hold of me, they know how to get a hold of me. Like, it's just TikTok going away was like the best thing ever. Because like I was just like, get off the freaking thing. I'm like, just toss it. But yeah, I think it's just society at large. Like, nobody wants to be bothered by anybody else, and they're just afraid to feel about anything. Because I had it happened to me the other day, and I said I made the time for somebody because I had a coworker come in. It just happened to me, myself in the office in the room that I was in, and she came in and she was kind of trying to compose herself, and I knew she had some issues going back at her home state or whatnot, and she just sobbing, and I'm like, I can leave right now if you want me to. I'm like, I have no problem, or if you just need somebody to be in the room and not talk to you, whatever you need, just let me know. She's like, no, I'm fine. I'm like, okay. If I'm here, if you want to say something. If not, we're friendly and stuff like that. We're not like best friends or whatever. But I was like, hey, cool. Like, I'm not going to press you for any questions. So I just kind of sat there. And I'm like, I have to ask you one question because I knew she kind of had to like release. And I'm like, is it your mom? She's like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, it's pretty much starting hospice care. It's like, I know like 3 or 4 people right now that are doing this. So I was like, hey, if you need anything, just let me know. I was trying to help her. Like, I'm like, you can't take any time off, like how the family leave start, how that works. It's kind of like, hey, just kind of tidbits. And I'm like, I'll shut up now. She's like, no, it's fine. And then she just kind of like, all right, so, and then she had asked me, like, turn around, like, turn the game face on back to like a work question or whatnot. But that's, that's kind of the way they operate. I have, that's what I do. I ask people, one of my good friends called me last week, and she just got on the phone and just starts sobbing, which is unheard of. Military family, her having some issues and whatnot, and she kind of gets into it. And I was like, I got a couple questions for you, and I ask this for everybody who like kind of calls me in that sense. I'm like, I can sit here and listen. 2, I can interject, or 3, I can try to help you resolve the situation. You tell me what you need from me before I even continue talking. Because I don't want to. I've too many times where you try to jump in and solve the problem, and also like, that's not what I want. I just need something. I'm like, she's like, oh, I've never been asked that before. I'm like, well, you're calling me, so what do you want from me? She's like, I need some help. I'm like, okay, let's figure this out, or at least get you, point in the right direction, or at least make you laugh about something. So I just made some joke about whatever. But that's why I try to encourage, my team when we're talking to other veterans, other military people, especially in our office, because like when we're in our my team is in the office for peer support. We're there to clinical speaking, we're just there to shoot the breeze with, and then just talk anything but clinical. I say clinicalese, right? Just to be funny. Like, hey, like how the Bruins doing, how the whatever the case is, or like I can't find my room, I don't know how my tablet works. I'm I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like, we're not there to solve problems. Like, we're not there to clinically solve problems. Because I had to sit in a room with somebody else the other day, and I'm like, again, talking at me, I'm like, do you want me to answer any of your questions, or are you just getting them out into the universe? She's like, no, I got a couple questions. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I can answer them. She's like, yep, fine. Because like, I'm not allowed to. I don't have the initials at the end of my name, and I'm like, we're non-clinical, so I'm like, hey, I would suggest my opinion would be, it's kind of like CYA on my part. But yeah, it's just,
Sure.
I try to instill that on like what, people I hire, companies I'm working with, if they're struggling with communication pieces, stuff like that. Because, working with executives, a lot of times as the people start talking, they want to know the solution to the issue. And I'm like, why don't you kind of peel that back a little bit, and find out what's going on.
When you think about kind of your journey, when you think about like the things you've learned, you said like when you went through therapy, you're still thinking about like those things that were helpful for you. What are like one or two things that you wish you could tell young you when you first joined up?
Life's going to change, and you're not going to come out the same person you went in, good, bad, or indifferent. And I kind of knew that going into it, but until I was made aware of it, I don't understand. Like, especially for, at least in my circumstance, as a combat veteran, you're exposed to a lot of different things. I didn't realize how much I changed until my mom one day, she's like, "Where's the old Ryan?" I'm like, on the USS Wasp before he landed. And that's the ship I was on before I landed. I mean, like, I had to come up with a life change. I couldn't like say life changing event, but it was more like I didn't realize I changed till someone actually pointed it out. Like, I wish I had my old Ryan back. I'm like, who the hell is that guy? But I'm like, you can't. It's impossible to change. It's impossible not to change. Sorry, that was the right word.
Yeah.
Not to change, because we change constantly. We, to use the word evolve constantly. We're always adapting to situations after the happening. But like, at least back in, and now I sound like an old crusty person. Like, back in my time when I was overseas, like, I didn't call home for over 3 months because we had a satellite phone in the middle in some field. As it like, they have like 15 guys behind me waiting their turn. There's a disconnect in that sense. So like, not that today's people have an easier time, but I know I came back, I'm like, wow, shit's really changed. Like, you kind of expect, like, and then it's almost a hesitation even with your own family, like, oh, what's he gonna do now? Like, hey, what's going on? How's this gonna happen? And then like, we're like both sides of the fence. We're both like, what's he gonna do? Like, oh, you didn't do that before. Oh, like, you got bigger. Oh, you lost weight. Or my parents laugh. My mom says to the stage, like, you came home and like your head was shaped like a light bulb. I'm like, thanks, Mom, because I lost like we call it the Afghan diet. Lost probably like, I went over there at like 175, came back at like 140.
Oh,
It was just like, so just like, I physically changed, and like, I even see pictures from the girlfriend I had at the time that she took of me, and I'm like, wow, that is a cold, dead soul. Just like the look of just 1,000-yard stare. Not emaciated is a strong word, but like, I found pictures and I'm just like sitting there and I'm just like dead stare in the face, and I'm like, I think I'm supposed to be smiling in that picture. I'm not sure. So it's like, I can see like, I can look at it now like practically 20 years later, and also like going back, look at those things and being like, wow, I was not a pleasant looking person, and it's just, so back to your original question, like, you're going to change, you're going to be affected. And I joined in the Marine Corps at 24. So like, I already lived 6 years out of high school. I had bills, I had payments, I had all that stuff. So when I went in, I was years older than a lot, like same age or even older than some of the people that were training me. So it was just kind of like a different environment. I knew it was a mental game. I just kind of laughed at it. I was just like, it wasn't that, like, they can't hurt you. Like, you have to do physical stuff. So I'm like, great, love working out. So like, just keep doing it. So
Well, it's interesting because you said like both sides changed. Like, yes, you changed, but also everything back at home changed. The people changed. The way they're relating to the world has changed. So you're right. It's like creating a whole new dynamic altogether.
yeah, and I kind of coined a phrase back, prior to like all of like post college. Sorry, that's what I called it, year two. It's that first year or two getting out of the military to figure out what the hell you're gonna do, and just not adapting. Like, we've had conversations with individuals and people that are getting out, and they're like, "What the hell do I do now?" And I'm like, hey, there's different programs you can get into that, they're like, yeah, but it's not uncommon for military people to get out of the military and like job jump for the first couple of years until they finally find something. I'm like, because you can't talk to the way. The biggest thing is like language. At least on my team, I can like kind of like, hey guys, we can talk military style, dropping F-bombs and all that stuff like that. But I can't go up to like the clinical side of the house, the social workers, like, hey, you have to unscrew yourself or whatever you want to say. I'm trying to be PC here, but I'm like, I'm like, yeah, I understand what you're saying. However, that can't be done right now. At least in the Marine Corps is like, oh hell no, like, or kind of pick your verbiage and stuff. But and like and that's what I tried to at least instill in those individuals. Like, I can't do the civilian world. I'm like, are you in the military? No. I'm like, you're a civilian, special kind of a civilian, but you're in their world now, so you have to learn to adapt to their world, which is now your world. So your world is now changing, and how are you going to adapt to that? He's like, well, I can't handle stupid. I'm like, well, we had stupid in the military, where you have stupid in society in general. To take a deep breath, kind of figure stuff out, just kind of help them walk through that process as it comes out. But it's just a lot of change. Because like, like my mom's like, hey, where's that, fun-loving Ryan? Also, he's just like 1,000-yard stare staring out in the backyard for no reason. You okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. What's the matter? So it's just a matter of like, they're expecting you to come back the same person that you once were, or they knew I was in combat. My dad's like, how'd it feel to shoot somebody? And I'm like, it's like target practice, because that's why they have the black silhouettes, because that's what you kind of equate everything to. And I'm like, it's all purposefully done that way so that they're trying to reduce trauma, I guess. I don't know. There's some sort of scientific method behind that or whatnot, and then come back like, so how was it? You want to talk about it? Because I just remember my brother, his father-in-law has since passed, but he was a recon Marine in Vietnam. And so he's like, yeah, I did stuff. I went over Vietnam. Okay, whatever. And then until my brother went over and did his thing and came back, his father-in-law just was like, there I was in the middle of the jungle. He's kind of like went into it, just kind of like, hey, I know you went through it. Now I know how I can talk to you, and that you make it less difficult for me to have you understand like the mindset that was happening at that point.
Yeah.
Like, and it just makes it easier. So that way, I'm like, I try to, when I talk to elementary or high school or college, try to make the stories or the events, I guess. I mean, make it as a story, but try to have them understand. Like, it's like, hey, has anybody got in a car accident? I'm like, yeah, that's traumatic. Like, it's kind of similar to what we did in the military. However, the difference between my trauma and yours is that we did it every day. Imagine getting in a car accident every day for the entire time that you're away from your house. And they're like, oh, they may not get it, but they have at least a minutia, a little bit of tidbit of like what it possibly could be. So just find that relatable point to have everybody understand what's going on. Like, we're just a subset that has this is less than 1% of us, but that are able to that fit in that category.
Yeah. You're talking about the silhouette and the target. It reminded me, I actually learned this years ago that in World War II, I think, of the troops that actually saw combat, I think only 25% of them ever fired their weapon. And because of that, the military purposely changed the way they were training firearms and tried to reduce the amount of time before you see a target and shoot, so that they would increase the percentage of people actually firing their firearm.
Yeah, we had no trouble firing.
It works.
It works. Yeah, no, like it's just like, people ask like funny stories. I'm like, we probably like the first time we got shot at it. It wasn't so much funny then, but after like a couple days later, like that was actually pretty hilarious. But like within 2 minutes, we had contact. We were in a column. We're driving through a valley, and it's just wide enough for our trucks to fit, our Humvees to fit through. And then we had contact front, contact left, contact right, contact rear. So we're completely surrounded. Like, my truck was one of the first ones to get shut up, and I'm like watching the machine gun rounds come up and like pepper the ground. You see the ground coming up, and then it hits the truck. We have no armor. I'm sitting there doing the Macarena, trying to make sure everything's where it's supposed to be. Like, you all right? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And I'm still like pulling the trigger. I'm probably hitting like 2 feet in front of me. Noises keep people heads down, so that's what I was trying to do. Yeah. And I look up, and my buddy Jose Cruz, I could see through the turret. There's a handful of bad guys up on the mountain range shooting down on us, and we're like, what the heck is going, we're getting into it, and the guy in front of us like, dude, you have to put a grenade style thing into that cave over there. And as he jumps out, he shoots through the door, like with a rifle round. And we're like, we start laughing, like, what are you doing? He's just like, okay. And then he throws a grenade in there, and then he shoots one in there. But we have these things called flare. It's almost like a parachute flare. And he shoots it off. He's like, I'm gonna burn him out. We're like, what do you do? Like, we're laughing too hard to like even like care that we're being attacked at this point. And then we had one of our machine guns stop working. And so the guy that was behind me, he jumps out, jumps on the truck. He's like, stupid. And he starts kicking the crap out of the machine, dumps some like lubrication, starts getting it. Mind you, we're under full attack. And he's just like, this is a pain in the butt. And he's kicking it. And we're laughing the whole time. And you're just like, kind of like getting through it. So I'm like, hey, call it dark humor, just call it survival. It's at that point, it's survival.
Sure.
So you're like, however you get through it, like we're laughing about it. And like still 20 years later, talk about that same incident. Like we're cracking up about it because he's like, I'm going to burn him out. Like that's the only thing that we remember from that whole thing. I mean, like obviously there's other stuff like, but fortunately enough, like we walked away unscathed for the most, like cuts and bruises and stuff like that. So I'm sure the scenario would have been different if there were like more loss on our side. But that's when we start talking about. So people are like, oh, how was it over there? I'm like, there was fun times, or at least we made the best out of the situation. However it was. Was there crappy times? Of course, there's crappy times. And just being able to explain, I'm like, I talked to one high school, probably the funniest thing I ever heard. It was a favor for somebody, and she's like, "So is combat? Is that like a weapon?" And I just kind of just paused, and I'm like, "Yeah, no, combat is the active engagement when either you're physically engaged in trying to end life or protect life." And then she's like, "Oh, so it's like Fortnite." I'm like, I started cracking, and like the teacher sat down as like this individual asked the question, and I'm like, no, it's not Fortnite. And then I'm like, once people go down, they don't come back up. And she's like, oh, okay. And afterwards, the teacher came by. He's like, I'm really sorry she asked it. I'm like, no, it's fine. I'm like, hey, it's just the fact that people are ignorant. They just don't know.
Yeah.
And like, when it comes from that, and when it, if it comes from a kid, especially like middle school, high school, whatever, like they just don't know. But I go, mainly the problems is when I run into adults because they get offended. Like, hey, why'd you do what you did? And I'm like, so it didn't happen here. And they're like, would you do it again? I'm like, yeah, ask anybody that served. Would I do it again? Yeah. And like you tell people, like 1 in 10 the people that go over, only that 1% actually see combat, where you actually see the enemy, where you actually engage. And I'm not talking mortar attacks. I'm talking, return fire, see fire, going back and forth. I'm like, I tell people, unfortunately, I was fortunate enough to be engaged in that situation. And I'm like, it's not like, yeah, I got it. I'm like, you don't necessarily want to do that, but you're put in a situation where like, you have to.
What is a question that you wish somebody would ask you?
That's probably the toughest question I've had ever. That right there. No, no, really. I guess I could say I'm happy when those teens. It's mainly teens that ask the questions like, "Hey, did you kill somebody? Did you end life?" Because too many people, like recent events like last night. God, it's freaking horrible down in DC and stuff. What's going on right now? But there's loss of life everywhere, and it's like you can't. That's like the one opportunity you can have a say in that situation, right? If someone's trying to hurt somebody I love, or someone is trying to hurt, somebody I care about, I'm able to take care of that situation however it looks. Not encouraging violence or anything like that, but like you have a say in that. Too many times we just don't. Like things happen for a reason. Like it can't be a car accident. I just had a friend of mine more recently perish out in California, and like he was combat veteran. Just a freak accident. Like it just like, how do you go into combat and get through all that? And then this happened. It's just like combat you get. Like you can say like, you know what? He died in combat. She died in combat. Like she did doing something they loved or that they believed in. And then you have like a random thing where it's just like they slipped and fell. It was a rollover out. It was a freak accident. It was just a weird story. We didn't find out about actually what happened until 6 or 7 weeks later. But it was just like talking to my friends like via text or phone. I'm like, guy goes through combat. gets all this stuff done, comes back, it's good to go on a reunion with his people that he was in combat with, and then this freak thing happens. It's like can't justify it, but you really can't wrap your head around it. A lot of people ask me, like, would I do it again? Yes. And then people I'm like, I knew for a fact, without a doubt, when I signed on that dotted line, what I was going to do. That's why I joined the Marine Corps, because like I truly believe, like, people ask me all the time, like, Marines are trained to fight. That's what we're trained to do. You can pull anybody from any station in the Marine Corps, and they're able to pick up a rifle and fight. Like, we train twice. You have to go to the range twice a year. I mean, we don't have tanks in Afghanistan because we learned from the Russians that those don't work very well back in the 80s. But we had a whole tank battalion. They're like, hey, you guys are all riflemen now. So they just jumped in trucks and they were marching through. Like, but that's how we're trained. I go, like, not exactly a huge skill set getting out of the Marine Corps. Not many places. Like, I was a tow gunner, so I could take out any armored threat in the entire world. Not too many job interviews like, oh, what can you do? I'm like, I could take any armored threat in the world with a 60, 70-pound missile, depending on where I'm at, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, Army has, they have not that we don't have mechanics or anything like that, but like a lot of the other military have job specifics that, like, you can be a diesel mechanic and get out and do that. And we had we called them motor T, our mechanics. They drove around with us, but they're shooting and running and gunning with us. And then crap, we blew a tire. They're the first ones out changing the tire, and then they pick up the rifle right back. So like, that's how the Marine Corps operates, and that's why I joined them. Like, I knew exactly what I'd be doing. I had no other inclination to do anything else, because I was like, I just want to shoot guns and make the enemy not come here, however that looks. But yeah, no, that's a really good question,
Ryan. This is endlessly fascinating. I'm so glad that we met each other that day.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got connected and that you were willing to join us. How can people reach out to you? How can people follow you and find out more about the work that you're doing at the home base in Wounded Warrior?
Yeah, so the home base, it's homebase.org, and that is it gets up there. And if you're looking for clinical mental health care, that's if you're the military person or the support person, it says get connected, and you just ask for your name, contact information like email and phone, and then a really quick reason what you're looking to get out, what you're maybe struggling with or whatever you're looking for on that aspect. And that we have a family support team as well. So we also have resiliency training. We have education pieces. We have over like 32 hours of CEUs on our website that any walk of life can utilize that. We have a lot of clinical social workers. We have just layperson that deals with any veteran in the community, just to how to talk to them, how to approach them. Anything in there, like, it's just, the site's been getting easier to navigate, and then you can just get in there. It says get connected, and it's like I said, 3 clicks. And then if you're a military person looking to get some clinical care, one of my team on the outreach team, we're all veterans, we're all military. They'll contact you within 24 to 48 hours usually. Usually no more than that, unless it's a Friday. Then we have to wait till Monday. We just can't cold call anybody. They have to make contact with us, and then we're able to make contact with them. And then if you're just looking to get together with other family members and stuff like that, and other families in general, we have called what's the Adventure Series, and you don't have to be a patient. We deal mainly in New England, at least for the Boston area. And like this past Sunday, we went up to Cranmore Mountain, where you had a free lift ticket, free rentals, free lessons, free lunch, and it was partnership with the Cranmore and Home Base program. And then we were able to get people up there. We had like 150 families, 150 people, families show up this weekend. You don't have to be a patient to enjoy any of that. Excuse me. You're able just to sign up for that, and that requires nothing other than just getting to the destination. We take care of everything. At no point should nobody will be paying out of pocket for anything that we do. And you can get me at I'll send you my link. I'll send you my email, because it's kind of a weird one. It's like rcasavant@mgh.harvard.edu. It's the one that you emailed me to.
Okay. I'll put that one in the show notes. It's all good.
Yeah, and like I said, it's whatever we can do to help. And like, if you call and have questions, or like, you don't have to have a reason to call, and just like see what's going on. But we offer resiliency training. So Lucie, on your side of the America, we have, and across the state lines, we have resilient parents, resilient child, resilient family. It's all virtual. It runs 6 weeks, every 8 weeks, give or take. It's all virtual, so we've been running that internationally as well, so people log on from wherever. We pretty much have something for everybody, and if we don't have it for you, if it's something that we home base can't provide, we can get that. We can make those connections for those individuals.
Awesome.
Sounds like
Ryan,
awesome
thank you
program.
so much for joining us today and sharing.
No problem. Glad I could come.
Thank
Too bad we
you.
only have an hour. No, I'm just kidding. I forget how
We'll have
much
you on again.
I forget how much I have to say about stuff. I'm like, this is like
Mhm.
part of my life, but like, no, it's just I really appreciate the time.
It's all right. We'll have you on again for sure.